I'm Cindy Bokser, and you are listening to the Fiber Artist Podcast, where we chat with artists, makers, and creatives who work with fiber, get to know their stories, how they came upon their fiber practice, and more about the person behind the work. Today I chat with Ellen Bruxvoort, the fiber artist behind FIBROUS. Ellen's work has been featured in Kohl Magazine, Ruby Wolf, and Hooray Magazine. And she's recently made the leap to brick and mortar with Broad Studios, a female artist collective, studio, and event space in Austin, Texas. You can find Ellen on Instagram at Ellen Bruxvoort. You might have known her formerly as Ellen BC. And her website and shop are online at fibrousatx.com. Alrighty, here's the episode. Ellen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Sure. I feel like we've been sort of Instagram friends for a long time. So I'm really looking forward to getting sort of into your background and how you got into fiber art. But so let's just start with the basics. Where are you from and where do you live now? And what's your sort of life situation right now?
Well, I'm from College Station, Texas, which is it's kind of like a medium-sized town in Texas. Most people just move there to go to college and leave, but I grew up there. So I moved to Austin about 8 years ago, I guess now. And I kind of kept it in Texas, but I love Austin. It's like a super vibrant, creative community and really great for small businesses. And so I live here in a house with my boyfriend, my brother, and a roommate. And
awesome.
Yeah.
You got a full house. It's so funny because in your stories, you always look very solo, like it would seem very solitary.
I know. It's funny because I've had some people who I've like met on Instagram come over to my house and they're like, "Oh, you live with people?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude." Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's go way back. Let's talk about like childhood. Were you crafty as a kid? And just like sort of describe what life was like up until you discovered fiber art and got into it and how you got into it.
Oh boy. So yeah, like to answer your question, I was totally like the art kid. My brothers were both into music. I'm 3 siblings, so myself and 2 brothers, and they were always into music, and I was always the one with like crayons in both hands, like scribbling all over the paper and walls, and I don't know.
That's awesome.
My mom, thankfully, she like encouraged it, but I was always kind of dabbling my hands in different things. Art class was my favorite forever, but then in high school, I sort of started to dabble more in like the digital arts. So I was doing like photography, film, graphic design, and things like that, which were really like piquing my creative and technology interests at the time.
Yeah.
And so I like, I don't know, I went on to try to pursue graphic design and advertising in college, but then I just realized that, I don't know, spending that much time in front of a screen was kind of like not fulfilling my creative desires. Like I just sort of felt like I was always working for someone else, like promoting something that I didn't always fully believe in, and that just didn't feel right to me. And so, and I just didn't really feel like I was as good as I thought I was, like, which that's okay, but yeah.
I experienced the same thing. I think it was because like it was something we really weren't passionate about, so we didn't really maybe put our full our full effort into it or something.
And I think those things just kind of like figured themselves out, like you have to try in order to know. But I tried, and I was like, this was cool for a while, but it's just like not clicking for me anymore.
Right.
And
so were you working? Okay. Were you working for was this? Did you have jobs in college when you were sort of pursuing advertising and graphic design?
Yeah, it was like always really informal. I mean, I've worked in the service industry like my whole adult life, but I always did like freelancing jobs where people would hit me up to, edit some stuff or create a logo for them or, whatever. And I was like always down. It was like a very yes man project because any work was good work. But
right.
I don't know. It just kind of lost the spark for me after a while, and I was like, I need to do something different.
Yeah. So did you did you major in advertising or did you get a degree?
Yeah, I
like a 4 year
actually
degree?
totally. I went to community college for 3 years, and then I went to UT for a year, and then I was just like, at the end of a semester, I like broke my collarbone in a bike accident, which was like this
Oh
weird, crazy thing.
no.
But it totally made me like skate by in the last semester. And that was kind of like spending that much time at home, really, because I was like, I took a month off of work. I was not in classes. I was like healing or whatever. And that, like, I don't know, it really caused me to just like self reflect. And that was
Yeah,
when I realized, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go back to school and have, be paying for something that I'm like not passionate about. And so
totally.
I didn't go back. I didn't finish school. And I decided to go and like work on organic farms.
That's
uh, it
awesome.
was like a total life 180, super weird, but also like I felt really good about it. I was like really passionate. I wanted to learn like how to grow food and where my food comes from, and like I wanted to be more involved in that process, and I wanted to travel for that experience. And so I like moved to Hawaii for 2 months and
That's
was
so
working on a
cool.
farm.
So, I mean, it may not seem like it at first, but that accident in a way was sort of a blessing because it gave you time to
Totally.
sit and think about what you wanted to do. And
Yeah.
that's awesome. Most people, I feel like most people don't really get that. They don't get that revelation until a little bit later, you know?
Yeah, and it all happens in your own timeline, but and I'm thankful for it. Like, yeah, it sucked, but it was ultimately really awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, so what did you
Yeah.
do in Hawaii then?
So I went there. I joined the organization called WOOF. It's like Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. A
Okay.
lot of people have heard of it. A lot of people haven't. I don't know, but it's basically just like this thing where you like pay to be a member and you have access to this whole database of people who are looking for help, and it's kind of like a work exchange. So you buy your travel there, but then a lot of places you basically like live and eat for free, but you just work for them. So um,
Oh,
I
cool.
mean, it was just an awesome way to like. I feel like most people experience Hawaii for like a week, and not that that's a bad thing because a week there is also
It's
awesome.
amazing, yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know, sort of experiencing like the local side of it, which I think Airbnb does a really good job of doing, but that didn't really exist like when I went. I mean, it did, of course, but it wasn't like a thing. And so,
Right, right.
um, yeah, I lived like in a not a touristy area at all. I lived like on the east side of the Big Island, and it was awesome. I lived with this couple. They were in their 60s, and we lived in yurts in the rainforest. And I worked on 15 acres of a cacao farm, and they made
Oh
chocolate,
my
and it was awesome.
gosh, that is so
Yeah,
cool. Oh my,
yeah,
see that even if you did Airbnb, like fine, you can live like a
yeah,
local, but like you're doing real local, like fully
yeah.
immersed on the farm with the land, like really,
Right.
really in there. That's amazing. What a cool
Yeah,
experience.
super cool. And I feel like it kind of gave me an appreciation for like just small, people pursuing their passions regardless of how popular they are. Because
Hmm.
like it was hard work. It was super hard work, but it was also really rewarding. And like you said, and it connects you with the land and your surroundings, and just sort of like gives you an appreciation for like supporting small businesses, I guess.
Right, right,
Because
yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it was awesome.
Definitely. That's so cool. Were you really healthy while you were there? I don't know. I just feel
Uh,
like Hawaii does that to people, like plus you're working hard and like, you know,
yeah,
eating organic, I assume.
yeah, we ate off the land, and like we're in an area where a lot of people were farmers, and we all did different things, and we didn't just grow cacao because you can't like just eat chocolate, but
Right.
yeah, we had bananas, avocados, coffee, pineapple, apples, I don't know, all sorts of things.
That's so
But
awesome.
yeah, it was cool. It was cool just to like I had never before really in my life been on such a regimented schedule, like we woke up at like 7 a.m., had breakfast, started work at 8, and then like had lunch at noon, and then finished work at 5 or something, and then had dinner at 6, and then I don't know, I like went on a hike or something. And it was just like eating 3 times a day at the exact same times every day, but
It's
it was
like
awesome. It was so
it's like a prison. No, I'm just kidding.
fun. Except beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's so awesome. So do you feel like you appreciated this, like having a schedule? Did it somehow set you up later for later in life, you think?
Uh, yeah, right. Like
Yeah.
schedule. um, I mean, it was perfect for that point in my life. Like I that was also my first time like traveling alone and just sort of like not only was I traveling alone, but I was in Hawaii. It's like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, jungles, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
And you're just surrounded by ocean and you just feel really small. And that was the first time I ever saw a lunar eclipse and I would just my life changed and I
Oh
don't
my
know. Like
gosh.
it was like one of those things that if I went back and did it now, I would probably have a completely different experience, but it was perfect for like I said, like just the life shift that I
Totally.
would go through and it was great. I would recommend it to anybody. But
Oh, I love it. You're like tearing up talking about it. It's like it's so
yeah,
amazing.
I don't know. Yeah, I miss those. I miss that time. It's a special shift, I guess.
Yeah. So how long ago was that?
That was in 2013, I believe.
Oh, so not
So
actually that long ago.
yeah,
Okay.
not that long,
Yeah.
stuff happens fast.
So then you come back from Hawaii
Hmm.
and what happens?
Um, so I came back from Hawaii and I wasn't going back to school. And I I just sort of had this like void in my life. Like it was like this creative void, like I didn't farming is an art in and of itself. And so that was just and I was doing, something constantly every day, but I came back and
Yeah.
I was like, dang, I don't really have anything to do. And so
Yeah.
mm, I but I was inspired by like so many people around me. Like I said, Austin's a great place for like creatives and small businesses, and artists, musicians. Like there's people doing stuff around me all the time. And so I think inevitably that sort of infiltrated my thought process. And I
Yeah.
was just like, what what do I do? Like
Yeah.
what am I good at? And at the time I sort of considered myself the type of person that was like sort of good at a lot of things, but not really good at one thing.
Hmm.
Which I think, it people are different personalities are different ways, but yeah, I don't know. I found myself sort of in another like deep thought process, and I was like laying in my bed one day, and I had this like woven pillow that I got
Hmm.
from Target, and I was just sort of like studying it, like I could probably make this, right? Like this is a thing that people do, and I like it, and textiles are all around me, so I don't know. And I at the time, I guess Instagram was way different than what it is now,
Hmm.
but I had sort of seen a few people doing things like that in my like explore page, and I don't know. It was one of those things where I was like, I know people are doing this and I like it, so maybe I could figure out how to do it too.
Yes, totally. I had the same thing. And it was
Yeah.
Instagram for me too. Like I was like,
Yeah.
who was it? There was one weaver. At the time her name was Chief and Cupie, and now it's Kel Reynolds. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I do.
I think she's Australian. Maybe I'll have her on the podcast. Anyway, um, but yeah, she did these like crazy, like super bright modern weavings, and I was like, I have not seen weaving that cool, like
Yeah.
ever, But I kind of knew it was like I was familiar with it from the '70s because my mom weaved. I mean, she quit it by the time I was born, but there were like remnants in the house. But yeah, no, Instagram totally did it. Do you
Okay.
remember? Do you remember like some of those early people that sort of inspired you?
For sure. Lucy Poskett, I think
Oh,
that's how
yeah.
you say it. Yeah, dude. I remember just like scrolling through her Instagram and being like, "Oh my god, this is so cool." And she was doing stuff that was really textural at the time. Like she was just the texture queen.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, and I remember specifically just like screenshotting these posts where um, she would do these things that were like super bulky and texturally at the top, and then she would sort of like gradient it out to just be a flat weave. And I was just like, that is
Oh,
so
cool.
and yeah, I don't know. She was a big inspiration at first, and I reached out to some other people. in the beginning, before I even like started weaving, and I was just like, hey, I'm like interested in starting to do this. Like, do you have any tips for me? And like, how did you start? And I think I also saw some of Marianne Moody's stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
most people. And yeah, but she sort of felt like this unattainable thing for me.
Yeah,
For
totally.
like, there were some people that I reached out to who were in my community, and yeah, some people responded, some people didn't, but I just sort of like took that and ran with it. And it's kind of cool because people reach out to me and they do that now. And I'm
Yeah,
just like,
yeah. Isn't it funny?
yeah,
There's
it's like full circle. And
Yeah,
I'm
no,
so
there's a flow.
happy.
There's like a flow of how
Totally.
this kind of happens when you pass on your knowledge and info. It's super cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that it was a Target pillow that inspired
Dude,
you
right?
first.
Oh my
That's
God.
amazing.
I still have the pillow because I'm like, this is such an ironic source of inspiration because now I just like, whatever. I think every creative goes to Target and they're just like, oh my God. It's like a love-hate relationship,
Totally, totally. It just goes to show though, you can find inspiration everywhere.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I mean,
Okay. So how did you first figure out how to weave? Did you find an online, like a tutorial, or did you take a class, or what'd you do?
um, I I YouTubed it. I went through all of there honestly were not that many resources on weaving like when I started, and I think
Yep.
for a lot of people who started in the past whatever 5-10 years. But yeah, I went through and there were some tutorials, but they were just like ancient, and I wanted to find something that felt a little bit more attainable for what I was trying to go for. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found this tutorial. It was super basic. Basically, the person had like a piece of plywood and some nails, and they just nailed like one line of nails at the top and one line of nails at the
Yep.
bottom, and they just plain weaved. And but they did a demonstration on how to like change colors, and I was like, okay, great, I can do
I
that.
got this.
And so I literally did that. I went and I bought a piece of plywood and some nails, and I went to Hobby Lobby and bought a bunch of yarn, and I just went at it. It took me like 8 hours or something, but at the end of it, I was like, I did this. I made a thing. I made a thing. I was like,
I had that same feeling.
yeah,
There's something so magical about it because you have something to
yeah,
show for all of those hours. And it's like, I don't know. I hadn't crafted in so long. And so when I first made my first woven wall hanging, that was exactly the feeling.
yeah.
And then, like,
And
you get addicted.
dude, and I think like that's the type of feeling that everybody is searching for, like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
it's the kind of feeling that I had whenever I was doing graphic design. I was like, oh my God, I did a thing. Like I and I don't know, I changed the way this image looks, and it's like psyched me out. But then I don't know, over time that faded, and I had to acknowledge that it was okay that faded. And I think that that happens for some people in fiber arts too, but it just hasn't
Yeah.
happened for me yet.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, and I think probably, I mean, I'm just guessing, but because most of those projects were probably not for you, like they were for clients or whatever. So there's only so much you can, I mean, you take ownership of the final piece, but it's not like yours, you
yeah,
know?
my brain, I
Yeah,
just can't
exactly.
skill. Yeah. Yeah. And I also just really, I'm stoked that like I love how fiber arts just feels limitless to me. Like, um, there are so many things in our lives that are textiles,
Yep.
whether it be your clothes or the throw blanket on your couch or the scarf that you wear or
Totally.
I don't know, it's just it feels like it doesn't really matter like what I'm making, I can always make something else. And so if
Mm-hmm.
I get bored of making one thing, like I sort of stopped making wall hangings for a period of time because it got, I don't know, it just like wasn't sparking me anymore. And so I
Right.
was like, I need to make this functional. I need to like make something that I can incorporate in my daily life. Um, and I got really excited about that because it was like I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing it differently.
Yeah,
And
yeah, totally. Yeah, you're one of those people that finds all different kinds of applications for it, and you seem to be constantly evolving, which is super cool.
I try to be.
Yeah. So you were working another job at the time when you were discovering weaving.
Totally.
And are you currently doing weaving as your full time, or not just weaving, but your fiber
Yeah.
practice is your full time gig now?
Yeah. As of, I mean, like I said, I've been working service industry ever since I was, I don't know, 15. But
Yeah.
then I was working mostly in like coffee shops. But whenever I started weaving, and then um, I was working at the same coffee shop for the past like 2.5 years or so. But then last fall, I told them that I was ready to like do my thing, and
Yeah.
they're honestly my second family.
Yeah.
Whenever I started there, they asked me that interview question where they're like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, "Well, not working here," but you can't really say that in an interview. And so, but I told them I was like, "Yo, I do this thing and I really love it, but it's like it's not sustainable yet, but I want it to be, and I know that I can make it if I work really hard, and that's where you guys come into play. You kind of help me build up my cushion so that I can like dive in." And whenever I sent them that email, I was like, "You guys remember that talk we had in my interview? Like, it's time." And they were all so excited. So,
That's amazing.
yeah,
And so supportive. And also, I have to give you mad props for being really honest
dude.
in that interview, because I would have bullshitted my way. Like,
Oh
oh, well,
yeah.
I want to be manager someday, maybe
Oh
own
no,
my own
yeah.
coffee shop.
I was like, like this is great and I love coffee, but I do not want to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
it
awesome. So when you made the transition out, how was that? Like, how had you prepared? Like, did you prepare in a responsible way? Like, did you budget? Did you kind of figure out how much it was going to take for you to, be doing this full time?
yeah, you know, it's kind of a if you're asking if I did things like really strategically and waited till I had X amount of dollars in this plan, like no, it wasn't like so regimented. But I've always, I don't know, I've always sort of been good with my money, but then also like tried to be just intuitive with what I feel is the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I, truth be told, financially, I probably could have started doing it full time like a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't know, like even when I was working at the coffee shop, I tried to be really good at just like saving money
Yeah.
because you don't need to buy things all the time, and I still do buy things all the time, but whatever. I but it just felt like it wasn't the right time yet, and I needed to sort of just be patient with myself, um and I would know when it was the right time. And it's kind of one of those things when people ask me like, "Well, how did you know?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. Like, how do you know you're in love? I don't like you just
Right. You just know. You just know.
yeah." And
But it,
so
it wasn't like I just need to get the hell out of this place feeling.
no,
It was just like you just
no,
knew you wanted to be doing the fiber work.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
I think like I loved that job. I still go there every morning to get coffee.
That's awesome. So you see
Yeah,
your family every day.
yeah, totally. And I wasn't like sick of it necessarily. I was at a point in time where I guess financially speaking, I was making as much money with my personal business as I was bringing in from working at the coffee shop.
Hmm.
And it was awesome to have those both happening at the same time. But I knew that if I eliminated one, then I would be okay.
Yep.
And I guess that's like a pretty good marker of just
Yeah.
being like, okay, these are the two income sources in my life. Uh, and when they are like relatively equal, then I can eliminate one.
Yeah. No,
So
definitely. That's actually really similar to what I did.
nice. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
So when you first started selling your work, how did you sell it? Did you do any markets? Did you go straight to Etsy?
Yeah, I went straight to Etsy. I think I don't know. I probably posted things on Etsy prematurely just because I was so excited,
Yeah.
I made like probably a dozen wall hangings, and I was like, I'm gonna make so much money, And I look at those now, and I'm just like, huh, I don't know. I feel like a 5-year-old would make those, but it's like an important part of my process and journey, and it is what it is, and people bought them, which is so
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, I did some pop-up markets like vending at the farmers market and things like that. I would like share booths at first, and that was cool. But like I said, also I just feel like my work was sort of premature for that type of display, but also a really it was a total learning experience,
Totally. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
putting yourself out there, having conversations about your work, watching people interact with it without really like talking to them first, like just seeing the way people um, viewed what I made with their like body language. I don't know.
Right.
I was just it was a people watching experience, but also totally a conversational experience. And it really helped me sort of decide that maybe I needed to refine my body of work before I like do this again. And so I waited honestly like a year and a half or something before I did another pop-up, and I was like really nervous about doing it again because I was afraid of that feeling, of
Right.
just it not being ready. But then I did it and I was like, this is amazing. I want to do this all the time. This is so fun. I love talking to people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Doing markets is such a different sort of it's like a different game because you really have to, I mean, you have to think about so many things. I've only done a couple, and it just made me realize like you have to be strategic about where your booth is placed, how
A
it's
lot of
set
times
up.
that's not up to you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then also like trying to get people's attention because
Mm-hmm.
they're so easy to just walk by sometimes. And
Yeah.
so it's a whole different animal.
And like honestly, figuring out like depending on the market, you have to figure out what type of things would sell at that type of
Mm-hmm.
market. Like if you're gonna go to a market that's like mostly ceramics and you have like a bunch of wall hangings or something, I don't know. It's like you have to kind of figure out what the target audience of the market is, and also what's a good price point for people who are just gonna be like accidental buyers. Like they didn't come to see me,
Yeah.
but like how can I rope them in with something that is like something you can justify just randomly buying,
Right.
Like a lot of
Right.
times people can't justify randomly buying like a $300 wall hanging.
Of
It's
course. No,
like,
of course not.
yeah.
It's
So it's
it's
like,
like $40 is max at a lot of markets,
yeah,
you
I
know?
have to like figure out what is going to be good to bring to the market and worth my time to prep, So
Definitely.
yeah, I don't know. It's exciting.
What were people's first reactions? Like, I remember when I did mine just in my community. I mean, I was in Jersey City at the time and like nobody had seen fiber art.
Mm.
And it was just, they looked at it like it was alien. Like, what
Yeah.
is this? What do I do with it? I'm like, you put it on your wall,
Yeah, it's art.
but it might be different for you because you're in Austin, which is so, I don't know, it's just, it's creative in a much different way. So,
Yeah.
had most of the people had some interaction with fiber art before, and like were they kind of familiar, or were there just some like blank stares?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mix of both. It's funny that like Austin is such a creative community, but the fiber artist pool is so small.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or if, yeah, I think that when I first put my work out there, like people had seen it, but not really.
Yeah.
And I think it might honestly just be sort of like a geographical thing, like wool and weaving. It's like there's like warm textures and people don't really want to buy that stuff when it's like 100 degrees
Right.
outside.
Right. No, it's true.
And so I would be doing these pop-ups in like midsummer selling these like wool wall hangings, and people were just like, ugh, get that away from me.
Right. Right. Like
So,
sweating, dripping sweat.
yeah, like that's the last thing. I want a popsicle, like I
Right.
don't need a, but all that to say, like there were people that were stoked about it and people that had questions, and I was, I think I was and still am like I love what I do, so I love talking about it, and I think that passion is sort of something that people can sense when they ask me questions. I love like going to other markets and booths and hearing people talk about what they love.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just sort of like this if you're talking about something that you're passionate about, people can feel it,
Yeah.
whether you know it or not, and I think that's so cool.
Totally.
But
Like your face lights up when you're
yeah,
talking about it, and you want to get into the details.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. No, it's so
Even if
cool.
they don't understand the details at all, like I want to just dive in and explain everything, but in steps.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, uh, let's talk about like your creative process.
Mhm.
I guess now you've been focusing, well, maybe not. You've been doing a lot of jewelry, but then you've also been doing some kind of ropey, what do you call them? I remember it was like,
Noodles.
yes,
Yeah.
it was like the best
Wall
name.
noodles.
Wall noodles.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Doodles. Right,
Oh,
sorry.
doodles, sorry.
Yeah.
Wall doodles, yes. It's the
Yeah.
perfect name for it,
Doodle
though.
doodle. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe we just renamed them. That'd be great. uh, yeah. Jewelry has sort of been a big hit. Just A, I think it's a good price point for people. B, it's accessible, it's fun, it's something that you like incorporate in your daily life. And I sort of started making jewelry because, like I said earlier, I kind of got a little tired of like making wall hangings. Um and I don't ever want to like talk down on them because it was my origin, like that was how I fell in love. And I still obviously have wall hangings all over my house, and they totally add to my space. But as for what I found myself like excited to make, sort of the spark was fading for wall hangings. And so I was like, I want something that I can use, or something that is sort of more incorporated into the daily Ellen,
Yeah.
And so what can I make that I can like choose to interact with? And so yeah, I sort of shifted away from making wall hangings and started making jewelry, and that was really fun. And I also sort of, I don't know, I love like the joy that was shared between that exchange, because it was something that I originally made my first pair of earrings when I was feeling like really down. And I wanted to make something that made me feel good. I don't know, that made me like feel beautiful, that made me feel like proud,
Yeah.
And so I made this thing, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. And I put it on, and I was like, I love what I'm doing. I love myself. This
That's
is
so
great.
cool.
It was like this sort of moment of adoration for my process. And, even if people who buy them are not buying them for that purpose, like you still buy jewelry to like, yeah, girl, you got them. You
I
still
kid
buy
you
jewelry
not.
to, like,
These are literally the only earrings I ever wear because they're so light.
yeah.
And also obviously like awesome
Yeah.
and gorgeous, but
And that was another huge thing for me, is because I'm always wearing studs because I don't like the feeling of stuff hanging on my ears. But so I was like, how can I make something that, and honestly, I didn't create tassel earrings, that is definitely a thing that existed
right.
before I came around, but I just sort of wanted to figure out how I could make it look like they came from me. And I at the time had been using lots of copper, and I was like, I don't really find like earring findings that are copper. Like it's mostly gold, silver, brass, and so yeah, I don't know. That felt really cool to just sort of source something that I felt like nobody else was using, and I really liked the way it looked, and I liked wearing it, and I liked sharing that joy with other people, because you buy jewelry to like kind of honor yourself, and you wear
Yeah,
it to honor,
totally.
it's like, and so I loved that. It was like this contagious thing that still keeps me making jewelry.
It's so
So
awesome.
yeah.
Did you go through a lot of versions before you landed on the Maggies that are what they are today?
Well, it's funny because the original pair of Maggies that I made were the cream Maggies that, and like they look basically exactly the same. I did a lot of like, I think most of the prototyping was figuring out the right hardware. And that's where I dug into the depths of the internet to find copper,
Yeah.
that something that I wanted to wear. And so honestly, no, like the first pair is basically what they look like now, but
That's
because I did
awesome.
so much looking, and I also wanted to make sure that whatever I created wasn't gonna like turn people's ears green and just like be gross after the first like 3 times you wear them. And so that was another, like, I just did a bunch of research. I was like, how do I make sure that whatever hardware I end up purchasing is not gonna end up being like a terrible quality.
Yeah, I know it's important. And
Yeah.
actually, at your price point, the quality and the fact that they don't turn my ears green. And I'm actually, it's weird. I'm actually allergic to most metals that are not like gold or sterling silver.
Really?
And
Huh.
I get a crazy allergic reaction, but these don't do anything, which is so weird to me. I was like, what is I don't even know
That's
what
awesome.
they are. Is it just copper? I
It's
guess I'm not
magic.
allergic. I guess I'm not
Oh yeah.
allergic to copper.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Just
awesome.
straight up copper. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
some allergies are so different, and that's just like it's kind of this nervous feeling that I have about making jewelry because I don't obviously, I don't want somebody to buy something and be excited about buying something from me, and then like I don't
Feel
know,
it.
have this crazy reaction, and then I feel responsible for that. But yeah, they seem to be well received in the allergy department.
Yes, they definitely are.
So yeah,
They're safe.
but totally.
So why did
But
you
yeah,
call them Maggies?
um, they weren't originally called Maggies. They were just called like copper tassel earrings. But it's funny. I actually, um, as a small business owner, you're always sort of like learning and growing and changing. And a lot of the like jewelry designers, small business jewelry designers that I looked up to, they had like names for their
Mm-hmm.
jewelry. And I was just like, that's a thing? People do that? Like what? Like why? But it also just sort of, yeah, it gave them sort of like
It's like
this thing.
personality.
It's like a thing to call them, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, what the heck could I name my jewelry? That seems so weird. And I'm like, I have name anxiety about just naming things the wrong thing. Having kids is probably gonna be really tough for me. But you take this like ownership and responsibility for what it's going to be called for the rest of its existence.
Yeah.
But I was like, the only like names that I was already comfortable with were names of my pets, and so um, Maggie was the dog that my dad had in college, and it's basically like what Luna is to me, Maggie was to my dad.
Oh.
And I have a picture of her that my mom gave me, and I was like looking at it, and I'm like, you know what, Maggie's a great name. Like, I'll just name him. I'll
Oh,
name
that's
my jewelry line
awesome.
after the pets in my life. And of course, eventually I'm going to run out of pet names, but we also had a lot of pets. So
Right.
it seemed like the easiest click, I guess.
Yeah, and they're pretty in a way, I don't know. It's like it's just a friendly good name. I don't know. You know how
Yeah,
some names like really turn people off, or
yeah,
you
totally.
know, it's not that kind of name. So that's good.
And it's kind of funny because like Maggie was like a scruffy old mutt dog. We kind of Shaggy Maggie, and
Oh,
I just thought it was
cute.
funny that like the tassels are just sort of like, it's like ear shag.
Yeah.
That's probably like the least appealing way to put them, but I don't know. It kind of makes me laugh. So yeah,
Oh, no,
they're
that's
named after
awesome.
me. So yeah.
Cool. So what is, so beyond that, so say you're stuck on designing something, how do you go about getting unstuck?
Well, I've sort of I have come to terms with the fact that the ebb and flow is inevitable.
Hmm.
Like the first time I sort of went through like a dip in inspiration, I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like I'm not weaving anymore, like this is, I'm not as into it this as I thought I was, like this is over. I don't know. And I just went through this like monumental like existential crisis basically, where I was like, is this the same as graphic design? Like, am I done? Does this not spark joy anymore? But I think that's where sort of like the instinct came back into play, and I was just like, no, Ellen, you're just like, you're a human being and you're not meant to be on all the time,
Hmm.
and this is okay, and you just sort of have to um not fight it as hard as you are, like I feel like people in this uh, like time where we're constantly being shown new things, new things, new
Hmm.
things. And as a designer, like you feel this pressure to keep up with that pace. And sometimes that's like not always realistic. And you have to kind of respect your mental health first.
Right.
And, like maybe if I was a team of 5 people, then I could be like, yo, guys, I'm not feeling great lately. Like, you guys take the reins. I'm just gonna like self-soothe for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just me, you know? So when I'm feeling down, I'm feeling down, and I just gotta like be patient with that. And, um, you know, do things that make you feel good. Like, for me, I like going outside and swimming and going on a hike or whatever the season may be. And I think that's just like a good place to reconnect and like feel calm. But
Totally.
yeah, and then also just like during that time, my sort of, I guess, mantra, for lack of a better word, just became keep showing up. You know, I even if it was just like to sit at my desk and like doodle or reorganize or just sort of like be in the space and I don't know, just to sort of like give it intention.
Mm-hmm.
That just sort of let myself know that this is something that I'm still into, but I'm just not feeling 100%. And I know that I'll get there, you know, but I have to keep showing up in order for it to, for it to reveal itself to me. So
Right. Right.
I don't know. Yeah. That's
No,
like the realest
definitely.
part of creating.
Well, yeah, and actually, I guess I found that I just took like an 8-month hiatus on like making macrame, and I finally made something over the weekend, and I almost think like, well, first of all, that was way too long of a hiatus. I think like I agree with you. I feel like you have to do a little bit every day just to like,
Yeah.
not that you're gonna lose it, but it helps you stay connected to it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that's a really good piece of advice, actually. Is just
And sorry.
no, yeah, just to
I posted a little thing on Instagram, maybe like, I don't know, a month or 2 or 3. Time flies. I don't know. But it was basically this wall hanging that I made that literally was on my loom for like 6 months. I don't know if you remember
I
that, but I was
remember
just like,
it.
you guys, this is the realest part of sometimes not feeling inspired. And but it was one of those things that it just sort of became this like symbol of guilt for me. Like, why can't I just finish it? Why can't I
Yes.
just finish it? But it's also, I love that wall hanging because, you know, I would sit down at my loom whenever I was feeling inspired and weave like 2 inches and then be like, oh, I hate this. And then I would just
Yeah.
leave, you know, and then, but every 2 inches is like a different stage of that process. And so, and then it was finally done and I cut it off and I was just like, this is so me, you know,
Yeah, you're like, I
because
actually love this.
yeah, you know, and then at the end, I was just like, you know what? It's okay to be patient with that process, and this is why, you know,
Yeah.
like, even if every 2 inches I hated it, but then, you know, at the end of it, I'm just like, this is Ellen in a weaving, and I think that's just a great reminder to just sort of be patient and keep showing up.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
know.
No, it's such good advice. Just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any like habits or rituals or practices that are sort of like non-negotiables that you do in your life to help you either like get centered or just, stay healthy or
Yeah. Well, my boyfriend and I, we every single morning we get up and go get coffee together, and you know, we could make it at home, but like I said, I like to visit my old coffee shop, which is also where we met. So it's just kind of like
Oh,
we
nice.
both know everybody that works there, and it's just like a nice little ritual to have. And we sit outside and we drink our coffee, and then we start the day. And that's just sort of something that has become part of my process. But then also, um, we have in the summertime especially, we have this thing where we have to take a day off and go swimming once a week.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it just allows us to sort of like check out and be in the sun and be in the water and just sort of, I don't know. We go to Barton Springs, which is a spring-fed pool here in Austin, so it's not like chlorine or whatever. But yeah, it's great. It's weird how your problems just dissolve the second you jump in.
Yeah, totally.
So that's sort of been a non-negotiable lately because I'll be like really stressed out and grumpy, and then we'll have that day, and then it's just like, man, I'm blissed out. Life's good.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
Oh,
I
that
don't know.
sounds so nice too, like natural spring. Oh,
Oh
and
my
probably so
gosh.
good for
And
your skin too.
when it's 100 degrees out, like it's hard not to just go every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, just kind of being on that schedule is a nice little treat.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah.
In your day, or I guess maybe in a typical week, like how much time do you spend actually making, concepting, marketing, Instagramming?
Oh man, like all day, every day,
Yeah.
except for that swimming day. It's crazy. I mean, I ever since quitting the coffee shop, it was sort of like whenever I was working there, it was a lot easier to be like, okay, these are the exact amount of times that I can be working on fibrous. And then,
Hmm.
um, but then whenever my other schedule at the coffee shop just sort of disappears, it's like, whoa, I can work on fibers whenever I want. And that is sort of a blessing and a curse because not only that, but my studio is currently at my house, and
Yeah.
so I can literally just like be working and at home all day. So to answer your question, I honestly have no idea, but it feels like I work every single day for like at least 8 hours. But some of that is also like, I don't know, petting Luna and but I I work every day,
Yeah.
honestly, except for the one swimming day. But even on that day, sometimes I come home and like make earrings. So um, I think that will change as soon as I move into my shared studio, which is happening so soon. Probably
Oh, that's
by the
awesome.
time this podcast is out, like I'll be in the studio already.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Who are you sharing with?
so I'm one of six girls. We're sharing a 1,600 square foot space, so we each kind of get like a little good chunk, and it is we're called Broad Studios, and there are three ceramicists, one painter, one natural dyer. She makes like silk scarves and other things.
Cool.
And myself. So we're kind of like a multidisciplinary studio, which will be awesome for like, just sort of collaborating, but then also sort of keeping each other accountable, being inspired by each other's processes, just being in a creative space with other people, or even just being around other people, period, is
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that I
totally.
realized that I've needed. Like ever since I quit the coffee shop, it's like you kind of get that vague social feel of just being around people that you don't realize you really need until you're constantly in a solitary practice.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Well, and I'm sure it's going to be inspiring just to be around the different media, the different media and just the
totally.
different personalities. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's going to be it's going to be really interesting to see what comes
I
out of
know.
you in the next
It's
year or so.
it's like exciting and scary at the same time because, moving into a studio is kind of like moving into a house with a bunch of roommates, and
Mhm.
you just never know until you know. But I think like we meet once a week and we sort of have um up until we move in, we've sort of just been like planning and figuring out like what this is going to look like, and a bunch of the other girls already share a studio space, so they kind of know the flow of things. As for me, I'm like, this is all new territory, but
Oh, it's going to be
um
so cool.
yeah,
I
I'm
bet.
excited.
And
I
then
think we all drive.
you can have like studio sales and like open
Yeah.
it up to people and oh, how fun.
Yeah. Every
Cool.
fall, Austin does this thing called the East Austin Studio Tour, and it's basically just like this studio crawl all across the east side. There are so many art studios and so many people doing stuff, and it's like hundreds of hundreds of stops, and it's awesome. People come out in huge crowds, and they just like walk around and see what you're doing and where you're doing it, and a lot of times they like buy your stuff and
Yeah.
about being a part of that. So
Austin is
yeah,
so cool like that. Just that there are
yeah.
so many artistic people and like you can be part of
So
that
inspiring.
community. And yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, do you take commissions on your work?
I do, yeah. Um, it's kind of it's a different like process every time. For the most part, I've taken some like custom jewelry requests, but
Hmm.
then also like most of the commissions are wall hangings and things that people want for their space. And yeah, there's not really like a a textbook format that I follow. It's kind of just like be open to the customer, see what
Hmm.
they want, what their space is like, what their budget's like, and we try to work with them to figure out exactly like what can work for both of us. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Cool.
I don't know. It's fun.
Yeah.
I don't do it like too often, but every once in a while, like people will see like smaller weavings that I've done. They're like, "Do you do this, but like bigger?" And I'm like, "Yeah, totally. Let's talk." And yeah, I've had some really cool pieces come out of that. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
So let's talk about Instagram.
Mm.
How do you feel about Instagram? Well, I wanted to say, like, how you were saying that the spark sort of started waning for wall hangings. Do you feel like that had something to do with Instagram being like just so much more fiber art saturated than it was when you first started?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that was most of that feeling because every time I would scroll through Instagram, and this is probably not the case for people who are not fiber artists, but Instagram knows that I'm a fiber artist,
Yes.
and so everything that it shows me is like wall hanging, wall hanging, wall hanging, wall hanging, and I'm like,
Yes.
okay, so what am I in this whole jumble?
Yeah.
And not that wall hangings, like I said, aren't great, but I just wanted to figure out a way to make them me because I didn't really feel like my wall hangings were me. Like I would make stuff of all different types, and it was just like, what is my style when it comes to a wall hanging? I have no idea. And
Yeah.
that was honestly like the feeling that I didn't really have a voice when it came to wall hangings was something that made me feel like I needed to step away from them. But then that's why I started making the doodles, because I was like, I I I know that I still want to make stuff for an interior space, but how can I revisit that idea while still making it something that like resonates with me? And I wanted to make it interactive. I wanted to make it like I don't know, just sort of something that was meant to change. And so yeah, I just started making these like bindi pieces, but it was totally Instagram that yeah, I kind of felt like everything was really saturated. But some people are so great about sort of establishing their wall hanging aesthetic. And I
Yeah,
just
no,
didn't.
they really are. I marvel all the time. And I think that's probably why I took, oh, hi, Luna.
Yeah.
If you guys are
Luna
watching the
made her
video, then
appearance.
you'll see that her cat came in the screen. But if you're just listening to the podcast, maybe she'll do a couple meows for us.
Oh yeah,
So
Luna. She
cute.
just woke up from her nap. She's just like scratchy meows.
Aww.
I love it.
um,
Anyway.
yeah, I know. So yeah, Instagram's funny like that. I feel like I probably took a break because I'm looking at so much macrame every single day. So
Mm.
I really started to feel like I didn't have a point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess you just have to keep doing it to get there, and then your
Mm.
work starts to develop a look of its own. And, I think it takes time,
Yeah.
certainly, and a
And
lot of experimentation and just doing what feels right, right?
totally. And I sort of felt like I wasn't with Instagram. I felt like the lines were too blurred. Like I couldn't tell what I was truly like wanting to make and what I was sort of like blending together of things that I've seen. Because like I said, like every scroll is a wall hanging basically, and so I was just like, are the wall hangings that I'm making like truly coming from me, or are they just sort of like this hodgepodge of influence,
Right.
which is also totally fine, but it was something that I was just thirsty to make work that I felt like I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was just where I was at the time. And some people are, like I said, really good at, yeah, sticking with it, making work, and like your voice just sort of comes out of that. But I felt like I wasn't doing that well. And so, yeah, and that was something that I had to, that was another thing. I just had to be patient with it, like stepping away and then revisiting it was necessary for me.
Right.
And,
yeah, definitely. What do you find to be like the most challenging part about being a small business owner and an artist and, all of that kind of combined?
Oh, there are so many challenging parts, but I think you just time management is sometimes hard, but also I think you have to be okay with like constantly being challenged and being willing to face that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like I'm a serial problem solver. So you know, I find something that's complicated or hard to figure out, and I'm just like, okay, I got this, you know? And I think that it sort of takes that attitude to be a small business owner, is to just sort of have like this go get 'em attitude. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, you know, we're sort of used to people sort of laying it out for us, and you just don't get that. Especially, I never went to school for this, and so there are so many things that I've had to figure out along the way. You just have to be okay with like getting told no and
Yeah.
getting turned down and sort of, I don't know, just like rolling with the punches. And you know, I think that you have to do that in any avenue of life, but especially when you're like a sole proprietor, you
Mm-hmm.
just you have to be okay with like taking that blow every single time and
Yeah, and you
figuring
really
out
do
how to
just
make it better.
exactly, you just have to figure it out. Just do it to
Yeah.
figure it out. And I keep thinking about like school and the things you learn in school and even probably MBA programs. Like there's no better way to learn than to own your own business.
Dude, yeah.
It's
Like
just like you just have to do it. I mean, like,
yeah.
you remember when you first started, like even shipping felt hard.
Oh my
Like
God.
you're
I'm
just
like,
like,
how do I do
how?
this? Why is this so expensive? This is stupid. You know, it's just like, yeah, I think pricing is the biggest learning curve for
Hmm.
sure. And that is something that, you know, I'm years in and I'm still growing in terms of that. But writing things down, making lists, staying organized, having spreadsheets, do whatever you got to do, you know?
Yeah.
But I, you can't keep everything in your brain because it just, I don't know, it gets too muddled up there. And so I
Yeah.
have to put it out in front of me because, you know, and like say for jewelry, I would have to remember like in order to make things consistent, I would have to write down like this is how many feet of rope I need for this thing or and you know, I think in the beginning I'm just like willy-nilly making stuff and it's like the
Hmm.
artist process and then you make something and you're like, wait, how did I make that? Because I need to make it again.
Right.
And so yeah, so the organization and the problem solving has always been something that's growing and I hope will continue to grow.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure. That kind of thing, like, totally is just one of those things that it evolves and it grows because you're learning more as you do
Mhm.
it, and the more you keep doing it, it just, it gets better, and you get better.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one could hope.
Yep. So what are your goals with Fibrous? Like what are your if you were to try to look in the future 5 years with Fibrous, what would you want to
It's
see it become?
like that interview question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, I think I'm taking a huge step right now with the
The
studio
studio, yeah, totally.
because as of right now, Fibrous has only ever existed in my home space, and um, I've known people who have, you know, started in the home and then went to a studio and found that that wasn't for them, and I'm totally open to that being the case for me. But I think that it could also just provide the space for me to grow in ways that I haven't yet.
Hmm.
I would love to like hire people. That would be so cool. I would love to um, do like installation work. I I think that yeah, there's a part of me that feels like maybe I haven't made so much bigger work because I haven't really had the space to work big.
Hmm.
But now that I have a bigger space to work big, maybe I will work big, you know?
Yeah, like make a
And
giant loom and oh,
yeah,
how fun is that?
yeah. Or, you know, I don't know. Like the possibilities feel really open right now with the excitement of a new space. And there are just, like you said, you know, with being around other mediums, I there's just so much room. And I don't, I'm the type of person that I don't really put expectations on things, but I know when I feel excited, and I know when it's like a good fear, or I don't know. To say that I have like specific goals, not necessarily, but I do want to hire someone. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah.
Cool. So right now you currently sell your work on Etsy. I know the jewelry is there. Do you sell anywhere else? Do you wholesale the jewelry?
Yeah,
Do you sell
I
to boutiques and stuff?
totally. Yeah, I wholesale, and then I also like I sell on Etsy and on my website.
Oh, right,
I
right.
just recently set up my like my
Your web
personal
shop?
web store. Web shop, yeah. But I still find that most of my traffic comes from Etsy, just because it's like this worldwide platform. And if people know about me and they want to specifically buy from me, then they go to my web store.
Right.
But I don't know. That's more often than not the case.
I
Um,
actually had a conversation with the CEO of Etsy last week,
whoa.
and he
Hey,
told me they have 30 million unique users a month, I think the stat was. Anyway, it's crazy. Like it's like something huge. And I was like, because I mean, I told him, don't worry, I'm never gonna quit Etsy, but like,
yeah, totally.
but yeah, no, I mean, and some people think it's like Etsy's too oversaturated and blah blah blah, but like, I still think it's great. I think it's
Yeah,
where people automatically go when they want something special. So
totally. Yeah, and you
yeah,
can like, it's really pretty interesting. Like, I'm a huge fan of Etsy just because I feel like um, it feels like they've sort of had my back every step of the way, like in the times when I was trying to figure out how to price my work, they sent out like this email and they were like, trying to figure out how to price your work, take this e-course. And I'm like, holy
totally.
shit, how did you know? Or I don't know. They've had, they like offer healthcare now, which is awesome. And they give you all the stats of where your traffic comes from. They make shipping a breeze. I
Yeah.
mean, I, I just, I feel like they're constantly looking at ways to grow and also still have that like human small business quality. And I really appreciate that because, some businesses like get too big and you just sort of become a number in their
Hmm.
system. But I feel like they've done a really good job of being like, yo, you're doing a great job and we're
I
here to help
agree.
you.
I agree. I so
So,
agree.
yeah, that's awesome.
Um, So, what kind of motivates you most these days? And has that evolved over time? Like from when you first started making wall hangings and thinking it might become a business to now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, everything has changed since I started, and like in the best way. And I hope it continues to change. What motivates me is my to-do list, which is awesome that it's even a thing. Because in the beginning, I just, I'd make something every once in a while, and it was like something that I did to feel good and calm down, and now it's my job, but it still makes me feel good. It's like it's this daily reminder that I get to be like grateful to do something that I love, and people pay me for it. Like that's so
Yeah. And it's very
so beautiful.
empowering, right? It's so
Yeah, it's
empowering and
like
like it gives you like full confidence in who you are as a person and like,
yeah,
what your capabilities are, What
yeah. Like you can do anything you set your mind to. And
yeah.
I people say that, but I'm living proof.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. My motivation is, it's one of those things where I'm grateful to constantly have things to do. And, if the harder I work, the more my grandfather always used to say, work expands to fill the time allotted. And,
Mm.
I was just like, what? You're crazy, grandpa. But
Huh.
now I'm in that boat where it's like I can work as hard as I want to, and as much time as I want to give this, I will have things to do if I find them. And
Yep,
sometimes those things find me, and that's equally as awesome. So yeah,
definitely.
he knew what he was talking about, basically.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I
Grandpa
got to
wisdom.
ponder that for a while.
I know. It's one of those things where it doesn't necessarily always click at the beginning, but then you're in it and you're like, okay, yeah, this like totally makes sense. But
Yeah,
anyway,
no, I get it. Like I'm feeling it even with this podcast.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
never would have thought that I'd do this or or even that I had the time, but it's like you just make it, you know, if there's something you want to do, you can make the time for it. So
yeah, there you go.
Cool. Is there anything going on that you want to self-promote? Self-promote. Is there anything going on that you want to promote?
Yeah. I mean, studio is happening. It's
Mhm.
awesome. I feel like if people are interested in that type of thing, we are really trying to focus on like community art and art education, and so we're going to be teaching a lot of workshops, which
Cool.
I don't like normally do as a regular part of my thing. So I guess that's another goal, is like getting better at teaching workshops and sort of being a voice in the community for fiber arts.
Yeah.
Not that I own it or whatever, but you know, I just want to be able to spread that joy for other people if they're interested in it.
Totally.
But then, yeah, we're also like trying to have guest teachers. People, you know, there are people who want to travel for their art and teach workshops, and you know, there are some people who have hit me up and be like, "Hey, I'm coming to Austin. Like, do you know of anywhere where I can teach a workshop?" And I'm like, "Yo, come to our space." But
awesome.
we have, yeah, I think we're really excited about that. And
what's it called again? Broad Studios?
Broad Studios, like Broad
Awesome.
City, but Broad Studios.
Because it's a bunch of broads.
Yeah, and you know, it's
I love it.
broad spectrum of art. I don't know. It was a double entendre.
No, it's great. I love it. What's the address so people can check it out if they're local to Austin?
Yeah, well, so we're at this sort of like art complex called Springdale General,
Okay.
which is at the intersection of Airport and Springdale on the east side of Austin. I think the address is like 1023 Springdale Road.
Cool.
But yeah,
well, is there signage, or like is it
yeah.
Is it street level or?
Yeah, I mean it's like it's a huge thing. Like you honestly like can't miss it. But we're building number 6, and we are we haven't moved in yet, but by the time this comes out, we probably will have. And yes, we'll have a sign.
Awesome. That's so fun.
Yeah,
oh, I'm so excited for you, Ellen.
Oh, thanks.
Cool. Okay, so just a couple like speed round questions. They're like random. Okay. If you were a color, what color would you be?
Peach. I don't know.
Ooh,
speed
I like
round.
It.
It's like I'm supposed to answer quickly. I don't know.
Yeah. No, sure. First thing that comes to your mind.
Oh,
what is one of the things on your bucket list?
Ooh.
Or places, maybe places to visit.
Places. I always want to go to islands. I mean, but I think that's just like the summer baby in me that just always wants to be by the ocean. But I've also always wanted to see Taj Mahal and the Colosseum.
Oh,
so
awesome.
2 totally different places, but I don't know. I just resonate with those for some reason.
Yeah, so, one of these days when there's time to travel.
Yeah, girl.
If you had 1 free hour a day, what would you do with it?
Ooh. 1 free hour a day. Anything? I mean, yeah. Drink margarita and go swimming.
Awesome. My kind of girl.
Is that enough time?
Yeah. Let's see. What is your current favorite book, podcast, or TV show?
Ooh. I really love Atlanta.
The TV show. So good. So good.
But honestly, I just love Donald Glover.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about this. Yeah. He's such a talent. It's ridiculous.
Totally. So that really into that show right now. Podcasts, hopefully this one.
I hope so too.
I mean, I imagine you're going to have lots of inspiring voices on this, so I'm excited to hear their stories. But there's another podcast called, How I Made This. And it's another like kind of origin story podcast. It's an NPR thing, but
yes, I've heard it a couple times.
Yeah,
it's really
super,
good.
Like, you know, big companies like Patagonia and Airbnb, and it's just like, how did this come about? And like, you know, are you know? And it's really cool to sort of put the human element behind those businesses, because they just sort of seem like this
huge
thing,
like hearing from the CEO and where it came from.
It's like, oh, you're a total human, and this is just an idea you had one day, and you're just like me.
And then they made it
So
like huge. So then it kind of gives you this feeling like, hey, why couldn't it be me? You
yeah,
know, it's
exactly.
pretty cool.
I was listening to this one episode. Oh gosh, I think it was like the Kendra Scott episode. I hope I'm not misquoting that, but she's an Austin based designer, and she totally like started in a room in her house, and now she's like this multi-million-dollar thing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
so awesome. But I just remember I like was kind of getting emotional in the episode because she talked about how she like was just doing like trade shows and things like that, and then she got an order from Nordstrom, and it was just her, and so she had to
Oh
like
God.
scramble and like hire her friends basically and make all these pieces and like in her living room or something like that. And then, UPS came and they picked him up from her house. And I was like tearing up because I was also in the middle of like my fall rush of just like making all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like this is me, like this could totally be me. And it was just this really, really, uh, the episode hit home, even though yeah, I don't even wear Kendra Scott or whatever. It's not really like my style, but like I said, it's
Yeah,
great to
that
put like the human element behind it all.
totally.
'Cause,
Just the inspiring stories of people, so
yeah,
cool.
it's awesome.
Okay, last question. What is your current favorite Instagram account?
Ooh, oh my God. Um, well, there are so many,
I know,
and
and I'm
every
making you
single
pinpoint one. It's
out.
like
Yeah,
ridiculous.
okay. Well, and I feel like okay, so maybe I'll just say one that's like not a fiber artist. I follow like a lot of pottery Instagram accounts, but there's all oh man, everybody will know this one, or a lot of people at
Maybe
least.
not. Maybe not. You'd be
Sandra
surprised.
Z, she's a woodworker in California. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
follow
like
her.
so many people follow her. I mean, she's great, and she sort of like achieved that whole like personal brand thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think pretty well, where she incorporates like her work and her life in her Instagram, which is what I try to do, and I admire and appreciate that, and I think other people do too, because like I said, I think we're all just looking for like the human element behind success stories, and
Mm-hmm.
she's a pretty good example of that. So even if her life sort of seems like a dream,
It's totally a dream. I was like,
no,
how is this her real life?
right? And I feel so weirdly fangirly about it, but at the same time, I'm like, she's just doing her thing, and like so am I, and that's awesome, And I don't know. I'm sure so many people listening to this follow her too, but if you don't, you should check it
Well, I'm
out.
sure we kind of all feel the same way about it. Like, oh, I wish that was my life. But also, it kind of shows you that everybody really is just a person, Like, we're all totally just normal people, even if we fangirl over whomever, like
Yeah, for
someone
sure.
with 200,000 or 1 million followers or whatever. And it's just, I'm kind of like, I'm even reaching out to people to see if they'll want to do the podcast. I'm like, oh, maybe they're way out of the reach, way out of my
Yeah.
reach. But like, you just got to do it. You reach out, and most people answer back. So
I mean, and at the end of the day, like, I don't know, like, no matter how many followers you have, like, you still have some of the same problems. Like, her work has been copied too, and like, she's
mhm.
had like insane struggles with like financial side of things and just like finding a workspace and, like, and I could name, a dozen other accounts who have talked about the same stuff. And I
Yeah,
think it's just about like, um, it's about like the ability to be vulnerable about those things is I think the key because I, like you can look at curated perfect Instagram feeds all day and like yeah, it's cool to have nice pictures, but also like have honest, real captions. And I
yeah,
think it's like that's the juice.
it is. It is. I know they
Yeah.
were talking about how blogging kind of is going by the wayside because people are using Instagram more like a blog. Yeah, and it's true. But that's the part. Yeah, those are the ones. Those are the pictures and the stories and the people that I like reading and following most. Is like the people who get real and aren't afraid to maybe say something controversial or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Speak out about what you
Yeah.
believe. Doesn't matter if it's related to your art form or not. Like this is your voice and and your humanity is part of that. And I think that that's like really inspiring.
Yeah. And I think we like sometimes get afraid to, you know, we'll post something controversial or something and like you're afraid of losing followers, but then you step back and realize that as many as you're going to lose, like you're going to gain as well. So
yeah, it's just about staying true to yourself. Like I don't
Mhm.
care about losing the followers who don't resonate with my beliefs, because like, I don't know, don't follow me then.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter, you know?
No bigs.
I don't know. Yeah. It's fine. You
Totally.
just won't see Luna's daily dose every day.
Oh wait, let me talk about. I just want to tell you, like, with your Insta stories are so good, and I don't know, you have this way of being just like so super real and like hilarious at the same time. I'm like, how does she think of this stuff?
Dude, I don't know. I used to use Snapchat, and I think that's like most people's stories. Like I used to use Snapchat, but then Instagram came out with Instagram stories, and now but it's like, you can have like pretty pictures and honest captions or whatever in your feed, but then you just get to be a total goofball in the story.
Yes.
And I love that.
It's like, this is up for less than 24 hours. All good. I don't care.
And I've had some people like say that they've never gotten to know the person behind the account better than they did until like better than, what am I trying to say? Stories help them get to know the person.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I like to use it for that reason. Just like, this is who I am. I don't care.
But yours are also just like really funny and interesting. So you guys, people who are listening, go to Ellen Beasy, her Instagram account, follow her and watch her stories because she's hilarious.
Okay. I don't know. Or maybe I don't. I don't know. Maybe that's the key. It's just don't try.
And yeah, like don't care.
Yeah, don't care at all. I don't know.
Well, it's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I guess that's the end of it, but I really appreciate you coming on, and I've learned so much about you, and I'm really excited to see what goes on in the next like year, 2 or 3 for you. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, thank you. Me too. I'm excited.
All right. Thanks. I'll talk to you later. Check the show notes of each episode to get the website and Instagram for each of the fiber artists I speak with. Be sure to give them a follow. And you can view video from this podcast on niromastudio.com/The Fiber Artist Podcast. If you enjoy the Fiber Artist Podcast, go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening.